Yo, and welcome to the 107th episode of Lake of Rage, a Pokemon trading card game podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kevin Clementi, aka Mellow_Magikarp. I'm joined today by two very special temporary guest hosts. We have joining us for the third time, the one and only Twitter troll himself, Jake Gearhart. Jake, how you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for being on. The people want you for every set review, so we're going to keep it up. We're 2 for 2 so far for the Scarlet Violet block.
I enjoy it. Yeah, always be back.
And joining us for the first time, someone whose name has popped up for quite a few of hey, who should we have on? So I'm excited to finally have them on. We have Nick, aka Ninecard TCG. How are you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing well. I just got back from the gym, so I'm energized, ready to go. I'm also very excited to balance out the really good ideas and depth of knowledge that you and Jake have with terrible ideas. So I think that'll be fun.
Bold of you to assume Jake has good ideas.
Well, all right, fine. His depth of knowledge, my lack of.
So we're going to be talking about Paldea Evolved quite a bit today. The good, the bad, the what could possibly work, what maybe won't work, but is worth trying out, because there's a lot of really interesting stuff in this. This is one where, shameless plug for my YouTube video, I put out a top 10 list of cards, and Paldea and Clodsire made the list. And that's one of those things of just this is just such a cool, potentially useful ability. And there's just so many good cards that kind of fit that same mold of this isn't meta, but there's a world where this thing becomes very important. And so I think that's one of the best parts about the set. So we're going to go through all of those ideas. Now, of course, last week's episode, we had James Arnold on. We talked about Iono and Reversal Energy for literally over an hour, just focusing on those two cards. So if you're interested in those two specifically, or you're why do people keep hyping up Iono or anything like that, be sure to check out last week's episode, because today we're going to talk about all the other cards in the set, or some of them at least, right? First one is the most meta deck by far, right? Chien-Pao Baxcalibur. I assume you two have either looked at lists, played some lists. I've played a couple games with the deck. I'll save my opinions till after, I guess. But Nick, can you start us off? What are your thoughts on Chien-Pao Baxcalibur? Does this automatically become a tier 1 deck? Is this where does it sit at the power level? How good is it? Stuff like that.
I don't think it's an instant tier 1. The list that I'm playing is actually the one that Azul put up that has the cross switchers and Bibrel, 2/2 Palkia. So you have a lot of stuff going in there, but I just think it's a less consistent Gardevoir, right? They do very similar things, and it just seems like you don't have the same draw power. So it's between Gardevoir and Miraidon. It's a better Miraidon, but it's not as good as Gardevoir.
I mean, to be fair, I think everything's a better Miraidon, right?
Yes, that's fair.
Jake, I know at one point you had hyped up Kyurem as one of the possibilities. Not the VMAX, but the Dragon type. So I'm curious, A, do you disagree with anything that Ninecard said about Chien-Pao? And B, have you tried out the Kyurem version of Baxcalibur?
Yeah, I mean, Kyurem was kind of just a day one. As soon as we see the cards, kind of thing. It's it doesn't really fill a role in the deck that needs to be filled. The HP on the Chien-Pao and the consistency from the ability is usually a bit better than being just a one prizer. So I think the advantage of Chien-Pao is that it's got a better Lost Box matchup than Guardy, and it's a bit faster, by one turn than Guardy. So you can if you start attacking right away and then just keep feeding Guardy one prizers when you can. And if they ever miss, then they kind of fall too far behind, and that's how they can keep up. But at the same time, Guardy has Curlia to work with, and Shiny Arcana Gardevoir, and now Reversal Energy. And even if they're playing the Luxray, then your Palkia doesn't even get in and work. So it's definitely a challenge for the deck to keep up, but the canceling Cologne and Greninja combo can help. And then it's also got a pretty good matchup against all of the Arceus decks, where it doesn't really care if it's getting judged pathed all the time. It can kind of put together enough one shots and have enough HP to stay in the game against those, where it might be harder for Guardy if they're getting like Iono to 1 plus Path. And then their active KO. That's like a lot harder for Guardy to come back from than a Beaverell engine deck. Which just makes the games with Guardy like especially interesting because you want to play around those situations so that you always have your outs to path and stuff like that.
One thing that I found with the deck is to go off your like the Arceus, judge path is assuming you can set up off of it. I will fully admit one of the games, like the very first game I played, I hit Arctina and they judged me turn 1 and I just never got a Baxcalibur up and it was terrible. But once you get the B barrel up and you get that first one shot, it feels really good because suddenly every Irida and every superior energy retrieval is essentially another Oko. And that is just so ridiculously powerful for the deck into the 2-3 prize decks like Arceus, right? And so it's like setting up, it's been fine. I put the deck down because it didn't set up enough for me as far as like you have to get the energies and the Baxcalibur and set up the B barrel but the deck's good. The deck is very clearly good. And once you do set up, the engine runs itself. Everything is so smooth and so there and so like powerful, I think is the right word there. You mentioned the canceling clone. Oh yeah, go.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, I think one play that you can do sort of like to make sure you set up more against those arc decks is really lean into the Paldea early game because it just has a lot of HP. And so if Arceus is like hitting into your Paldea, then you have a couple turns while you're still putting on pressure and then you one-shot whatever VMAX they throw at you. So that's usually how I've been trying to play that matchup. And it's working a bit better than trying to go just turn 2 one-shot the Arceus.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Slow and steady can win the race. And in this case, slow works for you because you just have to set up. And so if the game goes long enough to get there, using Palkia to slow it down, just hit stuff. And I like that idea, actually.
Yep.
So, Ninecard, you had mentioned you're playing Azul's list.
Yes.
It was what? The Cross Switchers, the Canceling Clone, Lost City in there as well?
Yeah.
Have you been able to just dominate some Manaphies?
Oddly enough, I haven't encountered that many Manaphies. A lot of the things I'm playing in like the early stages of the ladder is Lugia decks.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, you would think at the beginning of a set people would gravitate towards the new cards, but at least maybe I'm just so far down on the ladder because I don't play live because it's terrible. I'm just playing the Lugia players, and you do feel pretty good into the Lugias because everything you can one shot pretty easily. Even if they put like a V guard, you don't care because you're an EX, so whatever. And then I don't remember if Azul's list has it, but I use the the paralyzing Articuno as well, and that just stops Lugia pretty much in its tracks. You just keep paralyzing them each turn. What are they going to do about it? So that's a lot of fun to just really slow them down. But otherwise, I haven't had a chance to make the Greninja. It does run the Cancel Clone Greninja combo for the Manaphies as well, but just haven't had a chance to make it happen, unfortunately.
So for my own curiosity, and it sounds like I know the answer judging from what you said, but are you hitting more single strike or are you hitting more of the colorless Lugia so far?
It's the single strike still.
Right on.
Which...
Yeah, I think if you climb up the ladder a bit more, you might run into Jet Energy, and that might screw up your Articuno playing a little bit because that card is really good in Lugia.
I did mention that recently, talking about Lugia, that Jet Energy is a pretty good card for it. For that reason, you just don't have the space to squeeze in any real switch cards, so Jet Energy could be really nice. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to climb the ladder because I'm not really playing. I'm just not going to play that game.
I fully support that opinion. Okay. Next card that I think it's meta adjacent. It depends. Some people listening to this are going to be really mad that I didn't say this card is incredibly meta and going to break NAIC. And there's people who are listening to this who are going to be like, bro, that's a meme. Why are you talking about it at all? And that is, of course, Ting-Lu. Ting-Lu, it's got the ability to shut off abilities. It's got a decent attack, let's call it that. It's 150 and then put 2 damage counters on a Pokemon, so it synergizes with the ability, and you got the Halucha, and it's super cute. Jake, have you put any time or thoughts into Ting-Lu, played against it? Is this card currently, don't mention Hitmonlee, is this card currently going to do some stuff?
Yeah, my thought process is that I spent about an hour thinking of how you could possibly try and beat Gardevoir with this, concluded that it was impossible, and therefore threw out the idea of this card being viable, because I don't see it. They just put 3 energy on their EX and you can't do anything. You're resistant to fighting, and say Ting-Lu, like if Ting-Lu had a way to beat Gardevoir, then maybe it could work. But it also has to beat like Arceus decks too. And yeah, so I just think it loses to just those two, and like that's already too much.
I never realized Guardy EX was resistant to fighting until this.
Yeah.
Oh, that matchup. I definitely thought that was like Ting-Lu's only positive, was that it had a good matchup into Guardy. And apparently it doesn't, because it doesn't shut off the EX, and they're only taking 120 damage. Oh, sick. Okay.
Yeah, Ting-Lu can beat Lugia sometimes, and maybe Lost Box if they get a really good opening hand, but that's about it.
Right on. Okay, so you're anti-Ting-Lu currently. Ninecard. Any thought or playing against Ting-Lu?
I want to love this deck. I have it built. I honestly have it built physically. It's so slow sometimes. To get 3 fighting energies on an EX is not an easy thing, even with the Koraidon, even with Gutsy Pickaxe, because you have to commit so hard to get those fighting energies in the discard to use Koraidon's ability.
Mhm.
And then your turn ends, which is so painful. Gutsy Pickaxe misses. We don't have a Rangaroo to guarantee the fighting energy on top, for the pickaxe combo anymore. So as much as I do like it, and I think it can work, it's just because you're so slow. Sure, you hit Arceus for weakness. That's nice. But man, it's just something about it. Just as much as I want it to succeed, it just doesn't feel like it's time at the moment, even though I will probably play it to my own detriment.
I think that's a very valid way to describe my opinion on it too, is I will play it even though I maybe shouldn't. I don't know. Ability Lock has always been one of my favorite things in the world. It's so powerful, and yet this card just feels like it's not quite enough. And I feel like everyone has gone through the exact same thing I have, which is you read the translation the first time when, Tuan Lei had put it out, and you're like, okay, this card's broken. And then you actually read the card and you realize that you didn't know what it did the whole time. And it's like, oh, it's a little worse, right? It's like, okay, it shuts off everything but EX. So I was like, well, that's like a little worse. Or in my case, I realized I thought it was 1 damage counter on 2 Pokemon, not 2 damage counters on 1. And so I was like,
did that too.
Yeah, it's like, okay, the attack is even better because Hawlucha can get 2 and the attack can get 2 more. And then you're like, fine, you've essentially board locked them, kind of. You're going to knock stuff out eventually. You're doing 150 damage, but like, whatever, right? You're able to spread so much more efficiently without needing the Alakazam. And like, oh, this card's actually a little weak. And then you remember Boss's Order exists and you're just like, okay, cool. I think it was either the Japanese or the Taiwan stream where we watched a Ting-Lu up against a Lugia. And at one point they just went boss out of the active, use Starbirth, and the game was just over at that point. Because it was like, oh, you can use Starbirth and then you power up and then you don't do anything to a Lugia because it's resistant and it's game over.
The Lugia is also really annoying too, because at least in the previous format, in the Scarlet Violet format, every Lugia deck was running the Radiant Serena, which heals 20 damage from all your Pokemon every turn. So if they start putting damage counters on, I'll just heal them.
Mm-hmm.
And since you're putting 1 or 2 onto 1 Pokemon, unless you are using the Alakazam or your Hawlucha to keep 1 Archeops from using its ability, 1, they still have the other one, and you're not really dealing with whatever's in the active efficiently. And you're committing so much to just turning off a single Archeops that eventually they're going to heal and knock out your Ting-Lu. Tyranitar one-shots it pretty easily, unless you have like a Bravery Charm or whatever on it. It just doesn't work very well. And then, like you said, they boss something. Even if they, boss like another Ting-Lu, into or escape rope and you give the other Ting-Lu, you start to get 3 energies on that thing and it has a retreat cost of 4. Like it just doesn't feel good if you don't have an immediate switch out. There's so many things that can go wrong.
That's
I think the way that you sort of need to play against Lugia is like I think so one thing you can turn off the Radiant Serena, so you have to do that as well.
Yeah.
But that's like another thing to worry about.
Because then you're not
Right.
shutting off the
But it's
Archeops necessarily, right? It's
Yeah,
like where those
you just
damage
have to
counters going
sort
to
of-
go, and yeah.
Yeah, you've got to get like ahead early, and then I think you probably just need to target down the Archeops, like turn them off and then boss them. Because if you just leave the Archeops around, then Lugia can just because Lugia V-Star is also resistant to fighting, so you just put that active, and then it's not even getting 2-shot. So you like I think you have to set up enough damage on Archeops, like put 2 with an attack and then like 1 Howlucha, and the next turn like boss KO it, right? Because Ting-Lu does 150. So you have to, because Archeops has resistance as well. So you just have to you have to damage it and then bring it up, knock it out while also turning off the other Archeops at the same time. And then
That's
you
a
kind of
lot.
just like if you hit all that, then you're probably winning the game. But yeah, I'm not sure how often that happens because I played 0 games with the deck.
If you have my luck, you're never hitting that. I don't.
Yeah.
I can barely get a Lugia to start when I play, or so God forbid I have Ting-Lu. I get all that to knock out the Archeops and damage the other one, and also turn off the Serena before they set up enough Pokemon or enough energies in play where they don't care if it takes them a turn. They just keep knocking out or keep attacking into my Ting-Lu. I don't see that really happening too often.
All right, so Ting-Lu. Look, listeners, if you're mad that Ting-Lu's probably bad, break the deck, play it at NAIC. I will be so happy to be proven wrong. And Ninecard, it sounds like you're the same. I will be so
Very
happy if
much
this
so.
card is meta, but
I would be amazed if I was proven wrong.
Yeah,
I'd like to be proven wrong.
The next thing that I want to talk about are the 3 starters, specifically their evolutions. All of them are interesting to say the least. So I want both of you to pick your favorite starter. And if it happens to be the same one, that's totally fine. I like all 3 of the cards personally. So the Masquerada, the Skeledirge, I'll never say that name correctly, and Quaquavel as the last one, right? Dancing Bird. All 3 are
Dancing Duck.
interesting. Duck, bird, it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck. It's a bird, right? Actually, is it resistant to fighting? If it's not resistant to fighting, I guess it's not a bird, right?
It's not resistant to fighting.
Yep.
It's unfortunate. Ting-Lu can beat that then. Anyway, so pick your favorite one, and then Ninecard, go ahead and start us off. What is your favorite one, and sell us on it? Are any of these 3 good, and which is the best one?
I don't know how to say its name. Quaquavel. That sounds about right.
I'm also not sure, but yeah, the water one.
Yeah, the water duck. That is my favorite. And because Spiral Shot, for a water colorless, 230, put 2 energy from this Pokemon into your hand. Well, you have Baxcalibur to recycle or re-accelerate those energies, and you have Cheryl to heal all damage from an evolution Pokemon. But because you have no energy on it, you don't discard the energy, you put them back into your hand with Spiral Shot. So you just recycle Cheryl, Palpad, and accelerate those energies with Baxcalibur onto the Quaquaval. Yeah, you're setting up 2 stage 2, so it's probably not like the greatest, but you got the rare candies to make it happen. I think it's something at the very least.
Jake, I know you're going to say what I want to say, so yeah.
What? There's another Quaquaval. Yeah. There's a Quaquaval from Scarlet and Violet base set, so you don't even need to set up the Baxcalibur because it attaches the energy for you from your hand.
Okay, I forgot about the Energy Carnival one.
Yeah, that's why I'm so excited about the deck. I'm like, you could just have both of them as a branching evolution, and they synergize together, and it must be good. For all the reasons you said, everything about putting it back in your hand, Cheryling once is probably going to be game against some stuff, right? Obviously, what's it called? Luxray exists, which is...
Yeah, that's the problem right here. Luxray and Lost Box is going to be fun.
Is a very good card.
So here's the issue though, is like if Cheryling your stage 2 was good, Gardevoir would play Cheryl. But evidently it's not because it doesn't. So I think it just you just attack like if enough things like were incapable of hitting like Guardy EX's HP or whatever, then you could play Cheryl in that and then um uh just do 190 every turn. But we see that that's not really how Guardy plays, and I don't think that'll work for Quaquaval either, because it's just like Lost Box will play Raikou or Luxray, and they also have Lost Mine. A bunch of random decks are going to be playing Luxray, and then like Lugia can one shot you, Mew can one shot you, and anything that can't one shot you can probably Iono, and then you'll miss your Cheryl, and then they'll knock you out.
But what if we play 2 Spiritombs for the Mew matchup?
That might work. That might get them.
I say let's do it.
Sorry, I love this card too. I want it to be good.
Then they open Lisa Sparkle plus Fusion Energy in hand and don't care about your Spiritomb.
4 Temple of Sinnoh, done. Easy.
I pulled 4 of these Quaquaval EXs, and I'm probably gonna play it at some point.
I pulled 3, which is one of the reasons I want it to be good.
I think if Quaquaval did like 250 damage with its attack or like 280, then it could be good, but it's not even like it's not one-shotting anything. So like if you were one-shotting and healing, then it's like worth considering, like worth the trade-off of 2 stage 2s in play. But it's not doing that. And like if you get Iono'd, then your energy goes to the bottom 2. So you put the energy in your hand and you're trying to Cheryl, and then they Iono'd you to 1, and you need to draw energy Cheryl off of your barrel if you have it in play. But
that's where you get the Chien-Pao, and you get the energy straight out of the deck. Done.
How are you getting the Chien-Pao in the active, though?
I didn't say it would work all the time. I just said you have.
So you're drawing Switch Cheryl off of it. You're drawing double Switch Cheryl. Okay.
Yeah, because we play Rare Candy, so we're running Beautifly instead of B-Barrel.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
You could put the Eldegoss in there too, the Evolving Skies one. Search the energy out of your deck.
Wait,
that'll work.
So is that still legal? Is the floor not the baby one still
baby
legal?
Is not legal.
Okay, that doesn't matter.
No,
Never mind.
Yeah.
I was kind of into the idea until for those wondering, it was the Call for Family it made that card actually viable kind of in some decks, because you could call for family out your Sobbles as just like an extra keep calling, and then get the energies for your, if you watch my stream, you've seen it, for the baby Moltres.
Pedro, I think Pedro Torres top 8'd like LAIC last year with it in the Urshifu, right?
Yeah, it was Urshifu.
Yeah.
Okay, Jake, sorry. What is your favorite of the starters? Which one has any competitive viability?
Yeah, I think Meowscarada is the only one that really stands a chance in my eyes, because it's capable of like taking 2 KOs at once. I think that's like the thing. You either need to be one-shotting, like doing like 330 damage, or taking multiple KOs in one turn for a stage 2 to be viable right now. Because you have to sacrifice the like 1 or 2 turns like setting up before you get attacking. And Meowscarada, like if you get multiple stage 2s in play, you're able to like Yoga Loop stuff. With like the ability, you can do 2 of those and then Yoga Loop I don't know, a Ralt, and then also hit 220 into the active. But again, the problem is like so there's sort of 3 types of decks that you have to beat in standard. Where there's the like you have to beat Guardy, which just one-shots everything. You have to beat Lost Box, which will destroy your bench, and you also have to beat the Arceus decks, which will just tank everything. And then Lugia is kind of like a sandwich of Guardy and Arceus, but it's very inconsistent. So you have to be able to beat all 3 of those different things. And I think like Meowscarada, you can probably beat Lost Box if you get it set up. you can beat Guardy, but you stand like no chance against the VMAX decks, the Arceus VMAX, like Arceus plus VMAX plus Iono Judge Path. That'll just like shut down your strategy immediately, I think.
So then, Jake, I'll ask an important question everyone should be thinking. Meowscarada attacks for 2 colorless energy. The ability needs grass. Are you running this with anything except grass? Are you running double turbo in there as well? Or do you think that's kind of bait and you just need to run more grass to hit the ability more effectively?
I think you should probably be running at least like 2 double turbos, but I don't know if you need more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of depends on what you're going for. If you're trying to like set up some yoga loop something where you get some other attacker into play, then you play whatever energy that thing needs. But I think if you're just attacking with Meowscarada, you need a couple double turbos because you don't want to be like you have Candy Meowscarada in your hand, but you missed turn 1 energy, so you lose. You need like some way to be able to attack. Like if you get one shot back as well from like Guardy, you have to be able to respond with something, and without double turbo, you wouldn't be able to do that. I guess you could play like Raihan or something, but it's probably just better to play an
Or
energy that'll let you attack.
Leafy on V
Like Gardenia's
for the
oh,
turn
no,
1,
okay.
and then you play
There
Leafy
it
on
is.
V Star for the V Star ability to gust. All right, Jake does not
Which
appear
has
sold.
no effect on your strategy. Yeah.
I am so
Gusting,
sold on that.
not very good. You want the things on their bench to kill with you. Well, I guess you could bring the thing that you don't want to hit on the bench active, and then you snipe their bench. Nah,
See, now we're
it's too much.
talking. I want to mention, I kind of looked up as we were doing this. So the Quaquaval has the baby. The baby has a cool ability. Both the Meowscarada and the Skeledirge, my favorite of the EXs, the baby Pokemon, the non-EX versions, are so bad. It's like,
I actually think the Skeledirge one is like even better than Quaquaval, maybe, because
okay,
you could just attack
sell
with
me on that
reversal
then.
energy or something. I mean, it's just like it's not very good, but you can just put a reversal energy on it and do 190, and that's like not the worst thing ever.
I don't know, stage 2 doing 190 that you had to actually get out there that isn't Luxray, like
It's got a like decent HP though. I guess. Well, yeah, I guess Luxray. Like it's not. I don't think any of them are good, but I'm just trying to. Yeah, that's like the best one, and the first attack is like kind of okay against like Guardy. Like if they just one shot something, you can use the first attack, like knock them out because they have no HP left, and then accelerate a couple energy into play. I think the Quaquaval, like its ability is kind of good, but there's like nothing to pair it with that you can't like already use Baxcalibur or something else besides the EX, which is just not very good.
so Skeledirge, because it's got to be mentioned, right? I really like this card. I know it's not playable, and for no other reason, the bottom left corner has a water, which means Greninja is going to hit you for weakness and snipe your bench, and Chien-Pao exists. And so those are both bad things to be weak to, right? But 340 HP is great. Doing 270 damage, that's a great number because Defiance Band exists and you're a stage 2 deck, so that's cool. And then the first attack, heal 30 from each. Flying Flip might come back, in which case that's a good thing, right? It's just so bad. I want it to be good so bad. Everything about this card is good, but gosh, stage 2s, Guardy has changed the game. And by Guardy, I mean Refinement Curlia existing has changed what a good stage 2 deck is. So
yeah, I mean, if Skeledirge, if the second attack did like 400 damage minus like for each damage counter on it, then maybe it could be good. But it only like you're not even doing 280 at the start, and then as soon as they hit into you with like anything, you're out of range immediately. So any deck can just like hit it for like 240 damage or something, and then like your attack does 30 damage. And then you just have a stage 2 in the active that does no damage, and you've got to set up another one, and then they can just bring that one up and hit it before it evolves. And yeah.
Ninecard, you were going to mention?
I feel the same way. It's just 270. realistically, in half your games, you're not going to go first, which means your opponent's likely going to get that first attack off. So if they're not knocking out your stage 1 or basic Pokemon, they're hitting into your EX. Even Arceus doing 180 to this thing leaves you at 90 damage that you're doing. Like, that's nothing. You did all that, set up a stage 2 for 90 damage. It just doesn't feel great. And then at the same time, as Jake mentioned, even if you set up a second one, especially against Arceus decks or anything that runs high boss counts, they just boss it up and now they hit into your other one, and now both of them are doing 90 damage. Like, that's what do you do? How do you deal with that as a stage 2 deck? Like, how much tech or do you have to put in healing? Do you have to add to this to make it somewhat usable? It's just, I hate any attack that says it does less damage for each damage counter. It just never feels good.
If we had a card like Max Potion in the format, like maybe you could get it to work. But Cheryl is like your supporter. If you want to heal this thing, if you're gonna heal your Skeledirge, you're not doing anything else that turn because you're not drawing any cards. Which is just not very good.
All right, so I think we've beaten all 3 of the EXs into the ground pretty thoroughly. So let's go with some positivity. I'm gonna ask each of you to sell me on a couple of cards that you think are just good. Beyond no Iono, no Reversal Energy, no Chien-Pao, nothing that's like, the obvious. Give us something that's, maybe a little layer deeper in there. Jake, I want you to start us off. Sell me on some other card in the set as having potential, being good, beyond the obvious quote unquote ones.
Well, I mean, yeah, the obvious, the one that we just should mention at some point is like Luxray is very like Luxray changes the game almost like in it makes basically anything that can play Reversal Energy or just like Lost Box with Mirage Gates. Luxray just is like a super good early game attacker that just hasn't been available at all. Like if you go second against or you go first against the Lost Box and they turn 1 Cramorant hit you, most decks, like most setup decks, like Guardy at least, like they couldn't really do anything on turn 2 unless they hit like a Candy. I think Luxray just changes it so that like you have a good response to that. Which makes a lot more things like able to keep up with Lost Box. And at the same time, like it just makes Lost Box more interesting because if you're playing against Luxray, then like you can like choose not to Cramorant even, or like next turn you use Sableye to make sure you don't take a KO so that the Reversal Energy is just stuck on there and it doesn't do anything. So yeah, I think, and then also, if anything's weak to lightning, like it makes Palkia a lot worse. It makes Lugia a lot worse. It just changes things in that regard because, I think Palkia would be a lot better in Chien-Pao if it wasn't weak to Luxray.
Yeah, Luxray is good. I hate to just be like, but like, if you aren't aware and you haven't tried Luxray, you should try Luxray for sure. Ninecard, can you pick a different card and sell us on why it's so good?
I can. Jake just mentioned how Luxray makes Lugia worse. Well, I'm going to talk about a card that makes Lugia better, and that is Squawkabilly EX. Because Squawkabilly, sure, the ability says that you can discard your hand, draw 6, but you can only use it on your first turn. However, we don't need to play it from our hand to the bench in order to use the ability. We can nest ball for it. If we start it, we can still use the ability. So, do you have any idea how many times I've had double Archeops in my hand, but no way of discarding them because I don't have an Ultra Ball? I use my supporter or something like that. My Burnett's Prize, whatever it is. So now Squawkabilly is just that ability just lets us get those cards out of the discard, into the discard, see a fresh set of 6. I think it's going to help with the consistency, especially of finding that turn 1 Lugia or that the Lugia V-Star the second turn, since we can have it benched, still play a research or something, discard the cards and not have and save the ability for later that turn, the next turn, whatever. I think it's such a great card, at least for Lugia. I don't know how many decks really want to discard their hand at the beginning of the game like that, but Lugia really doesn't mind as long as it's not nothing but energies, which is about 40% of my hands, it feels like, but that's Lugia for you.
I think the attack on that is also like pretty worth mentioning, like 20 and then getting 2 energy from the discard attached to something. That attack is like, yeah, it's not bad. Like if you go, if you're playing an Arceus deck, for example,
Yeah.
and like maybe you drew into your switch card or something, like a switch card, you can like set up a Giratina to be ready on turn 2, something like that. It adds like more flexibility, more consistency, and also can help you like pressure an opponent sooner.
Do you
You will
think
give up 2 quick prizes, though. It does have 160 health. It's very easy to KO.
Yeah, I mean, if you're attacking turn 1 and then like, I guess if you're going, if you're against something like Lost Box, it's a pretty fine attack to use. If you're up against Guardy, it's also like an okay attack to use because they're going to be one-shotting. And as soon as you go up ahead on prizes, they one-shot anything now with Versal
Right.
Energy. So, so yeah, you just have to be fast against a deck like Guardy. And then, like, even if they take 2 prizes, you just Iono them, and then Path, and then one-shot whatever they attacked with Giratina. And that's a pretty strong combination.
Do you think there's currently room for a deck that utilizes squawkability like as an actual energy acceleration? Like not like as a solely, but something like I'm going to use Regidrago as the example because it's the most obvious, just bad card that needs energies. It likes to discard. It needs really awkward energy counts. Is there a world where something like that is like, okay, I'm going to play a couple squawkabilities to be more likely to get into the active spot on turn 1, get the guaranteed thing, get the energy in the discard pile, and power up a Drago on the bench? Or do you think the attack is just like a nice bonus and not something that can be actively used to replace Arceus V-Star, for example?
I think it's possible. There's not like too much that like really needs it. Regidrago is a good example. There's also like I've thought about Gudra V-Star maybe, or the Caparajah EX as well in this set. Just like a couple things that have no great way to get energy on them like immediately. Like they usually take a couple turns to power up, but you can get them going by turn 2 with this. So yeah, there's potential. I wouldn't bet on it doing well, but yeah, it's at least something to think about.
I do kind of like it, especially in something like a Gudra, or maybe not so much a Drago because you don't. I feel like you don't really care about Drago's V-Star power, especially because Arceus is just so much better. You just guaranteed get 2 cards versus hope you've hit something good off discarding 7 or 6 or whatever it is you do with Drago. So I think it's kind of cool in like a Gudra deck where you can start powering it up pretty easily, and then you never have to put another one into play. And you just now you don't have competing V-Star powers like you do like Arceus Gudra, which doesn't. That's one of the big problems. If you use Starbirth to set up like you probably will, now you can't heal all your damage with Moisture Star. So at least this gives you a little bit of acceleration, a little bit of draw power, discard, and can start setting up a little bit easier. I do kind of like it in Gudra, but I don't know about much else.
I'm just over here hoping Regidrago is going to become playable. Like, I loved Mewtwo. I know it's not Mewtwo. It's budget Mewtwo, but I want that card to be good. Gudra, Duraludon, what's a new Noivern? Like there are good attacks to copy. So the copium for Drago for me is super real. Jake, give us another card.
Yeah, ironically,
Or
well, I'll just mention I was looking at like Noivern EX for a little while and like thinking that this card is like really good against Guardy for a little while, and then I realized like because you could stick a path in play, you're doing 140, so you're one-shotting the one prizes. But then I remembered Worker exists, and so they just play Worker and then they one-shot you and then you lose the game. But yeah. I guess the next card that we can talk about, I'll say is Spiritomb. This is like everyone talks about it against Mew, but it actually does a lot more to the like metagame. It's good against a lot of stuff. Lugia especially. Like if you put Spiritomb down turn 1 and Lugia can't use Luminion, they brick twice as often as they did before.
Yeah, you do.
And it's also good against like Guardy. You can stop Zacian. Like if you're a Lost Box player, one of the early things that like Guardy likes to do against Lost Box is start hitting with Zacian, because if you're like responding to the Zacian, then you're not Sableyeing, and if you don't respond to the Zacian, then it's just there taking a prize every turn. But if you can, like Lost Box, go first, get the Spiritomb down turn 1 against Guardy, you can shut that off. Also like Luminion and Guardy as well, to like make them less consistent, because if they do play Luminion, they can't use it turn 1. Chien-Pao as well, if they really want to play Irida turn 1 to find like VIP and whatever rare candy for turn 2, and if you put the Spiritomb down against them, then that'll all just shut them off. Shut them off of Luminion, and Luminion's like a really good attacker in Chien-Pao, because it sort of acts as a one prizer that's like always, like, you can just keep putting up your Frigibacks or Greninjas or whatever after you attack with it, and so you're decreasing their consistency by putting it down as well. So that's and then another thing to mention about Spiritomb is that the Spiritomb is the only Pokemon in the game where if you draw it off of a mulligan, you're supposed to bench it. Or like you're supposed to put your active down and then bench it. So if you see any good players benching a Pokemon on turn 1, you know it's a Spiritomb, or they're faking out that they put a Spiritomb down. Not that it matters much, but there's no other Pokemon in the game that you'd want to put down on turn 1, because you can always get Howlucha or Escape Roped or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good point. This is something I would always rant about on my stream, but like you never used to, right? So before, there was never any reason once Reset Stamp rotated to bench a second Pokemon, right? And this was something I always was like upset on PTCGO when my opponent would bench multiple things. It's like, there's no reason. Do you want a second Comfey down? Probably in every single matchup, but why would you give your opponent that information? Why would you do any of this stuff? But the Spiritomb is a good point. If you're going second, blindly, or especially if it's like game 2 or 3, there's a reason to be like, well, I want the Comfey and the active, but I'm gonna go ahead and shove the Spiritomb on the bench, shut off those Genesects too. That's a really good piece of advice I didn't even think of.
Yeah.
Ninecard, give us another card.
I'm gonna give you a series of cards, it's the United Wings.
All right, sell us on it.
Secretly, I love this deck. You have Flamigo, Instaflock. You play it from your hand to the bench. You just get all the other Flamigos out of your deck into your hand. You got Squawkabilly to discard all the Flamigos, your Watchels, your Murkrows, whatever. So now they're all in the discard pile. You have double Turbo Energies, Dark Energies. You can accelerate the Dark Energies with the Squawkabilly, like we just talked about, if you wanted to. And you just kind of hit for some numbers. You got the Sudden Transformation Ditto from Crown Zenith that lets you copy attacks. So you can have all of those with the United Wing Pokemon in your discard. Use the Dittos to attack, so you're doing maximum damage, and then Rescue Carrier the Dittos instead of the United Wing Pokemon, and just keep recycling attacks with Ditto for either double Turbo Energy or a single Dark Energy if you have Murkrow in the discard. So I kind of like it.
I'm going to be honest. How many United Wingers are there? Because I have no idea.
I've played against this 3, like attackers.
Yeah.
Or 3 just period. So there'd be 12 total as the max.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Flamigo searches out 3 Flamigos. So that's why it's better than Night March or Mad Party or whatever. But and it also hits like good weaknesses. But I think Sableye is quite a big problem.
So it's a colorless, which you're probably going to discard Lightning and Dark as the attackers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. To put you where you think I think this deck is, I don't even know what the cards do for it. But okay, so you can do damage, and especially Lightning type is like a really good type right now, as we talked about with Luxray.
So is Dark, and they're all basic Pokemon. They can all attack for a single attachment.
Okay. That's actually That's playable. Jake mentioned Sableye, which we mentioned before the podcast of just like,
Yeah. Sableye makes things tough.
Sableye's existence is
Yeah,
just pain.
there's ways to hard counter just about every single deck in the format right now, except for Lost Box. Like, and all the hard counters just lose to Lost Box.
Listen,
Yeah, there's literally like 10 cards that you can like build around, and you just destroy Guardy, but you're never beating Lost Box.
you play the United Wings with the Espeon VMAX, and now you're set for them to boss KO that Espeon in one hit, and then you just lose, and you just pack up and go home, get some lunch. I don't see the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the Lost Box are going to be cutting their Drapions for Spiritomb, so maybe they can't one-shot anymore.
That's true. Yeah, the Espeon's just hanging out. No, you're good to go.
Just hanging out there, yeah.
I will be interested to see though.
You put the moon badge on it.
Oh gosh.
The moon sun badge, they can't boss.
Yeah.
They have to Lost Vacuum and play Drapion and play boss. That's a tall ask for them.
I'll be excited to see if United Wings can beat the other decks though. Like outside of the Lost Box matchup, like if it's a viable deck into the other matchups, I think that's a positive thing, right? Like Mad Party struggled to beat most decks.
It's like somewhat competitive against Guardy. Like it's pretty even, I think.
Okay, that's a big plus.
I did lose to a United Wings deck with Lugia on live.
Actually, that also makes a lot of sense, right? If they go fast enough.
Yeah, because Lugia, I don't know, it feels like 8 out of 10 times recently, I just don't set up quickly enough. And they're like, all right, they're just hitting me for 120, 180, 180, and they're a single prize deck. So yeah, sure, they do 180 with a single prize basic Pokemon for one attachment. That's pretty decent. And I'm still struggling to find my Archeops so I can get them into the discard. And it's like, come on, man, this is I can't lose to this. And then I did. The Watchwell comes in and knocks out my Lugia V. It's like, come on, man, it's a tiny little bird. How are you doing this?
I mean, shout out to my favorite thing about the live ladder is when you hit jank and you're like, they set up flawlessly, and I think that I didn't. Like I lost to Hisuian Zoroark, the psychic type, Spied Ops deck when I was trying to play the Arceus Umbreon, and I was like, all right, I don't think they beat much of anything, but they got turn 2 quad Spied Ops out. So I'm going to take this loss on the chin and say, I hope you recorded that, buddy. Jake, give us another card.
Yeah, we can like briefly mention like Fortress EX. I'm not sure that this is actually any good right now, but it's just like an interesting card to keep note of. Especially with reversal energy around, being able to force your opponent to take prize cards is always useful in these when you have these like counter energy, reversal energy type things around. And I think this one is pretty balanced as well because like we've seen Electrode like EX, the original Electrode EX was like literally game breaking when Scramble Energy was around because. But yeah, Fortress, like it isn't able to attach the reversal energy. Like it's limited to grass types, accelerating to them. But it's still like you can still play it in like a Zoro box or some kind of deck, like just to force your opponent to take prizes if that's ever important. And it's also like it's ironically not a bad like attacker early game as well. Like 120 and then you take 30 less, and then you have like effective 300 HP. Like that can like get in early against like a Lost Box, take a couple prize cards, and then while they damage it, you knock it out.
That's what my absolute favorite thing about the card is just the attack. They hit you, and then you're just like, all right, I'm gonna blow up anyway. Like I got a free turn of 120 damage, which, like you said, is sometimes relevant. Boss KO a B-Barrel, maybe KO a Comfy, something like that. Ninecard, give us another card.
Are we doing just ones that we like?
You do one you hate.
I got one that
Yeah,
I got one I seriously dislike.
Yeah, give it to us.
It's Tinkaton EX.
I don't know what
I-
it does, so that probably means it's bad.
Stage 2, 300 health psychic type Pokemon, weak to steel. And it has an attack, Big Hammer for double colorless. It does 30 times the number of cards in your hand. And I don't like it. I will say, my wife, she came to her first pre-release for Paldea Evolved. She doesn't really play much, but she came with me, and the deck she got in her pre-release kit was Tinkaton. And she's like, "Oh, this is kind of fun." She's playing the stage 2 version, like the single prize one. So I was like, "All right, like, do you want to play a game? There's a Tinkaton EX. I'll build a few," and I did. And man, it is just so not fun. She actually played it against. I used Ting-Lu, oddly enough, and I wrecked her. It was really difficult to watch. You never want to do that to your wife, but I did, and I would do it again. It's just so bad. I don't know. It doesn't have the same. You're running it with the curlier line to try to discard a card to draw 2, so you can constantly go up 1 card in your hand. But then you have to try to work in the Feebas and Melodic to protect your hand from Ionos and Judge, and just but then you have the part of the game where you have to play the cards at some point. Otherwise, you just don't do anything, and you're like, well, I hope I just naturally draw into what I need so I can play the fewest cards possible. God forbid you got to throw an Ultra Ball down. It's like, well, there goes 3 cards out of my hand. My attack's doing 90 less of damage this turn. So I don't know. I just was not a fan of it in the very little experience that I have with it.
The worst thing about the card, not even being a fan favorite Pokemon, the baby is solid, right? Discard, draw 3. Like, in theory, those branching evolution lines should be interesting. And this one's just like...
And the attack does like 180 if you have a reversal on it. So like, yeah, I think the regular Tinkaton is like it's not an awful card, but the EX is
bad.
It's a fun deck, but I'll make a bit of a shocking statement. I played probably like 20 games with Tinkaton EX, actually.
Bro, how have you played more games with Tinkaton than I've played? Period.
Because it's not for standard. Because so I'm actually so I'm I'll, like a bit of an exclusive thing, I guess. So I'm working. There's like an event happening where like at the right after NAIC, where a bunch of speedrunners are gonna learn Pokemon for the first time. And I'm like building the decks for that. And so one of the decks that I'm building is a Tinkaton EX deck.
Please tell me it's balanced. Like all the other decks are fair.
All the it's like they're all built around like bad like EXs. And it's a fun deck.
The Tinkaton.
It's a fun card when it's a fun strategy to put a bunch of cards in your hand and then do a bunch of damage. It's just not very good, especially in a format where they just printed Iono, so you need like Milotic as well.
Yeah. We started calling it Stinkaton because they're super creative.
I know.
That'll make a lot of people happy.
Everyone lost their minds when it was so bad because so many people I love Tinkaton. I had it on my playthrough of the game. It was like, this is so sick. And then they revealed the card and everyone's just like, y'all, this is really it's psychic type, which already feels bad. And then B, it's like, it's bad. I'm sorry to Tinkaton believers.
I am not a fan of Tinkaton as a Pokemon.
What?
Because I learned it has beef with Corviknight, which is the objectively better steel type.
That's why it's cool.
So amazing. No, I am Team Corviknight all the way. Corviknight is an incredible Pokemon.
All right, let's go one more each. Jake, give us one more card. One last one that you want to leave the people with.
I guess I'll just mention the Cetitan in this set. It's not an especially flashy card, but yeah, just 80 plus. If it has a special energy attached, it does 140 more. So it's like a good combos with reversal energy really well in like anything that plays reversal energy.
Zoroark.
Yeah, Zoroark mainly. Yeah, it's like it does more damage than Lux Ray. It hits for a different weakness. So if fire ever becomes good, that's a good thing to mention. But I guess I'll just mention that like this set overall like feels like underwhelming when you're looking at like specific cards to pick out and like say that this is the new S tier deck of the format. But I think this is like um this set and Scarlet Violet base set as well, and from what we've seen in Japan with like the 151 set, is like a really large shift in like game design direction from Creatures Inc. in Japan, where the sets are no longer like they're no longer themed around like I guess yeah they're still themed around like the Chien-Pao. You've got your Chien-Pao deck and your Ting-Lu deck, but those are no longer like the everything the set is. Like it's more the sets are becoming more like game balance updates basically, where they print Spiritomb. It's like a bit better counter for Mew. We already had Drapion, so it's not like anything crazy new. But then you just add like more tools for older archetypes to deal with. Like reversal energy opens up options for previous archetypes. Yeah, there's just a bunch of like cool different interactions with cards and a lot of like new, like completely unique effects. Like the Weavile as well from this set, where you move it to the active and you switch an opponent's bench Pokemon up. Like that's a really cool card, like we've never seen before. The Pelipper as well, which is like a Holland transceiver from back in the day, but on an ability.
For those
So
who
I think,
don't
like,
know, it's
even
search your
more,
deck or discard pile for a supporter.
yeah. I should mention that.
Thank you. I didn't
And
know
like,
that.
Yeah, that card is older than some of our listeners.
yeah, yeah. I think I was probably like 2 years old when that card came out, or something. Four
God, I
years
don't want
old.
to hear that. I feel so old. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. So like, even though the individual cards like aren't all like that special, like we don't have a new S tier deck, which is like a good thing. The Chien-Pao is a balanced deck. It's not going to take over the format. It's a tier 2 deck. Um, but it's like very viable. It can win a tournament. It's not gonna like kick out a bunch of decks. Like even though we kind of like Lost Box to die, it doesn't do that for everyone who likes Lost Box.
I like Lost Box for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think Lost Box is like one of the best decks they've designed in like many years, but it's just like Sableye is so annoying. And it's my favorite Pokemon too, so at least I like that I get to get beaten by my favorite Pokemon. So
Ninecard, can you give us another card or any other last second thoughts you want to leave the people with?
Yeah, we'll do Jet Energy. I think we
Yeah.
didn't really talk about it too much. We mentioned it briefly, but Jet Energy is just a special energy, provides one colorless energy. When you attach it from your hand to a benched Pokemon, you get to move that Pokemon to the active spot, which is really, talk about giving Lost Zone decks a real boon. Now you can get 3 Comfies. You can use 3 Comfy abilities for a single attachment. You have one in the active, you Flower Select. Attach a Jet Energy to Comfy 2 on the bench, move it into the active, Flower Select. Discard that energy to retreat to go into Comfy number 3, Flower Select. You just got 3 cards in the Lost Zone. Turn 1 for a single attachment, and you haven't used a single switch card. It is unbelievably good in specific decks. And we talked about it being used in Lugia decks. You already want a ton of special energy, so you wouldn't mind throwing 1 or 2 in there just as you're playing something ridiculous that wants to trap you in the active, paralyze, lock, whatever. Now you have an answer. Eventually, you can just draw into it, and boom, now you can start making some stuff happen because you can get that Pokemon out of the active. It's really strong in the decks that can make use of it. For a lot of decks, who cares? But I like it.
As much as I hate Lugia, my absolute favorite combo with it is you don't have to pay retreat for your Weird Ear, which is great because Lugia can OHKO everything, and that's what it was missing. Another powerful attacker.
I'm still going in. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that it's like it's good to read the wind turn 1. Like if you have a Lugia and you Jet Energy in your hand, you just draw 3 cards with it. So
yeah, it's very true. I'm still playing the single strike version of Lugia, And if you thought for 1 second that I wasn't going to mention Single Strike on this podcast, I don't know who you think you're talking to.
I will say Single Strike, I wanted colorless to be better, but Single Strike it feels significantly better than the colorless version has looked and felt from what I've seen. Like, gosh, Tyranitar is so good.
Colorless has like a little better guarding matchup, I think, though, which is a pretty good thing to have.
Especially going into NAIC.
Yeah. Just attacking with one prizers. And it's also like better against Lost Box, but you were already pretty favored against Lost Box. So there's benefits to both decks, which I think is like a good thing, that there's like more options for the same terrible flip card reliant deck.
I know. I miss Evolution. I really did not realize how much I would miss Evolution Incense as a card. But here we are.
It's wild how just other decks too are like, I really want this thing to be back. Granted, it would make some of them a little too powerful, but yeah, that card was so good. Jake.
Yeah, I want something like Pokecom back, communication. Where you
I would take that any day.
Yeah, it's a good card. But I was going to mention with Jet Energy, like one of the main like beneficiaries of this is like Giratina Lost Zone decks.
Yeah.
Where I think like a lot of people have sort of like, it's funny. I'm a Giratina Lost Box defender in terms of it being a good deck. Where I think a lot of people like it's done nothing in North America in terms of events. But the point is that like Giratina is like marginally worse, like in our current format, pre-Paldea Evolved, is like barely worse than every other Lost Box deck. So there's no reason you'd ever play it. Just because it's a little bit worse, even though it's like not much worse. It's just you have a deck which does the same thing but is better, so no reason to play those. But with Jet Energy and Iono especially, it makes Giratina a lot better of a deck, because the things that it could do over Lost Box decks are actually like an important thing to do now, which is basically to set up your attackers before you take prize cards. Where Lost Box decks, like that was sort of like a benefit of them. They don't play any two prizers. They just slap down an attacker and attack right away. Whereas and that like before, you just have to worry about Roxanne. And like most people are only playing, like decks are only playing like 0-1 Roxanne. But with Iono, it's a lot better to set up your attackers before you start taking a bunch of prize cards. And like Giratina can make use of Jet Energy, so it's more consistent. It also has Abyss Seeking, which Jet Energy and Abyss Seeking is like a super powerful combo as well, because like turn one you can do a couple flower selectings, Jet Energy and the active use Abyss Seeking, and now you're even using Sableye turn two consistently sometimes. Where like the other Lost Box variants have to play like Skystone and Vacuum to be able to do that. Where I think, Giratina is a good thing to mention, that like I think people should be respecting the deck a bit more than they are right now, and just getting a couple games against it when you're testing, like especially like if you're an Arceus player, because the difference between playing Arceus against a non-Giratina and a Giratina deck is a very big difference.
I had considered Tina to go off that exact matchup. I considered Tina for Portland, and one of my friends played it, and I DM'd him. He did incredibly well. He played it. He's very good at it. It's top 1632, whatever the highest placing Lost Zone Tina was, right? And that was exactly what he said about the Arceus matchup, is you always Abyss Seeking, because they cannot KO your V realistically, right? Like, sure, maybe you can pull some shenanigans, Halucha, Radiant, Alex. That didn't exist at the time. And they're like, okay, you do that, they smack you, and then you pretty much always get the return KO, because you've seen so many cards at this point. You're keeping all of your Comfeys on board, so you just need that switching card into the Comfeys, and then like, it's just so powerful using Abyss Seeking into anything that is a multi-prize that cannot KO you, which is Arceus, which is still very much a real deck.
Yeah, I sort of see Giratina as like the like Lost Box is like trying to scramble to put all its pieces together. It's got to hit like Mirage Gate, Recycler, Kyogre, like find its attacker that it prized. So it's got to find the heavy ball. And there's like so much that can go wrong with Lost Box. And Giratina is just sitting there, just it's set up already. It's gonna do its thing every game. It's gonna do it literally every game. It'll do the same thing. And like in the face of Iono, that's just really good.
I need you to stop making this sound so good because I play a V-Star VMAX deck. So like, can we not do this?
For the record, it's still not the best deck. It's like it's just an option.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think that is actually important
and-
after saying all that. You're slightly worse at Sabling than the Lost Zone decks are, which is important, right? You're a little worse there. And there are better quote unquote Oko decks that exist. Looking at Baxcalibur, Chien-Pao. So it's like other decks do what you do better. You just happen to do both things well enough.
I think it's actually kind of, it might even be like you. I think it's better at doing Sableye than the other Lost Box decks because of that like turn 1 Abyss Seeking thing.
Interesting.
Like against Guardy, like you really want to Sableye like immediately.
Yeah.
And so yeah, turn 1 Abyss Seeking is often better than just like KOing whatever they have in the active. Like it depends because like Cramorant turn 1 is really good, but like if you can guarantee the turn 2 Sableye, that's pretty good.
I guess I played too many 3 vacuum Lost Box lists where I'm like, bro, you don't need to Abyss Seeking. You're fine. Gets 4 Seal Stone for the vacuum. Yeah.
Put the vacuums in the Tina and then you're good.
If you find room for that, good for you. You have figured out cards that I have not. Nick, Ninecard. Oh, sorry. Last thing. Go.
I was just gonna say I stopped playing Lost Zone decks when I realized Rapid Strike Urshifu, was it the Earth and Seal Stone just wasn't as good as I wanted it to be.
On that note, if the people want to find more of you or your content, where can they find you?
Everything at Ninecard TCG. I put 3 or 4 YouTube videos up a week, so mostly on YouTube, but Twitter as well. Ninecard TCG, super easy.
Jake, if the people want more from you, where can they find you?
Same. You can find me on Twitter. Jake, just search my name, Jake Gearhart. It'll pop up. You can check out pokegear.app as well as my like deck building site. And I'm almost done with an update for that. I've been saying that it's been coming out for a couple months, but it's almost done and it's a lot better. But yeah, I guess that's where you can find me.
Bro, give me that mobile support.
Pokegear.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I use Pokegear all the time. It's great.
Especially now that we can't show deck lists on live for whatever stupid reason they didn't fix that. So yeah.
Do you want to go for another hour? Because that's what'll happen if I start talking about this.
But that is one of the reasons Pokegear is so good, because you can just have the list fully there, visibly appealing with whatever you want. You can minimize the arts, you can make them prettier if you want to. That's usually what I do. Like it is great, and especially as a content creator when you cannot show a deck list on the actual client. Myself, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube at Mellow_Magikarp. If you're still listening to this and you're in or near the Seattle area, the 17th, which is the next Saturday in your life, Tabletop Village will be hosting a 1K tournament with Paldea Evolved legal. Color proxies are also legal within reason. Like, don't bring a 60-card proxy deck, but if you need a proxy for Ionos, you can do that. So be sure to check that out. I will be there. I'd say winning, but honestly, I'm going to play Reversal Guardy probably and misplay myself out of Top Cut. And that's fine. I'd rather do it at the 1K than NAIC. So check that out if you're in the Seattle area. This has been another episode of the Lake of Rage podcast. We'll catch you all next week.